Bloodborne is From Software's most fast-paced, pulse-pounding adventure to date. The combat is more kinetic and aggressive than the more deliberate call and response of Dark Souls combat, and as you wander the forsaken streets of Yharnam, the brilliant sound design will completely consume you with the grunts and tortured howls of things that could be half a mile away or inches from your back, forcing you to keep alert and move like the wind. Ironically, the exact opposite is true for the localization schedule of FromSoft's art books. Usually, art books attached to big-name games will drop during the big rush around that game's release, but North American localizations of FromSoft's cult hits tend to wait until a year or two after release. The plus side is that this lets the stellar art from their DLC packs into the art books alongside the main game content. But the Bloodborne art book absolutely deserves a place in your collection if you're a Bloodborne fan. If you like Bloodborne's art direction, I can't recommend this book highly enough, even if you already own the smaller art book that came with the game's collector's edition. That art book leaves out a large chunk of the game's concepts, namely everything to do with the cosmic horror side of things, presumably so players wouldn't be spoiled for the big Lovecraftian twist while they were flipping through the art book while waiting for the game to install on launch day. As I did. But the official artworks is a tour through every location in the game with large, high-res paintings of every forsaken corner of Bloodborne's world. Nothing is held back. As I mentioned, the DLC is also given its day, and the horrific vistas of the Hunter's Nightmare are a harrowing sight to see as luscious paintings. The detail in these images is breathtaking. Even just flipping through the book on the day I picked it up, I noticed things that had eluded me in the game itself. Like this image of the standard wolf beast. Notice the flaps of torn clothing still clinging on to its scraggly fur, like a constant reminder of the man or woman this abhorrent thing used to be. The first thing you might notice before even cracking it open is that Bloodborne's official artworks is presented in paperback format. I've seen comments from people who are disappointed at this, particularly from those who ordered it online and whose postal employees treated Do Not Bend as a personal challenge, because the Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 art books are presented as lovely hardcovers. While I have to admit I would have preferred a hardcover, Bloodborne Official Artworks is the kind of paperback that feels thick and sturdy to my hands. I'd compare the physical integrity of the spine to the Mega Man Anniversary design works, or the art books put out by Ballistic for games like God of War 3 and Uncharted 2. It doesn't feel flimsy or cheap at all. And once you crack it open, the art is what matters, and the art is stellar, whether you're a boss or some hideous thing buried in the Chalice dungeons. The detail in this illustration of Amygdala is breathtaking, just like this lurid concept art of these standard enemies from Old Yharnam. As you play Bloodborne, the environments drip with atmosphere. You never feel truly safe or secure. There's always the possibility of some abhorrent thing lurking in the next cape of sickly shadows. But looking at these environment illustrations, I gotta say, this book brings out the raw beauty in Bloodborne's art design. Check this haunting vista from inside the Forbidden Forest with forsaken Bergenworth looming on the horizon above the trees as though beckoning you. Or this lavish spread of Old Yharnam, its color palette a grim reflection of the fires that tore through this place. And this, I want to sneak into a museum so I can hang this in it. One thing I love about Miyazaki's world building is the way he can set the imagination wandering with something as simple as the name of an enemy. These big Sasquatch-type creepers that chuck rocks at you in the nightmare are apparently called Giant Lost Child. Huh, wouldn't have been my first guess. It fits Miyazaki's expressed motif where he tries to imbue his nightmarish monsters with an air of tragedy, as he talked about in the Dark Souls design works. This thing is called the Fluorescent Flower. Pretty name for a creature that usually gets this reaction from first-timers. What the hell is that? On a side note, I didn't realize until capturing footage for this video that these little blappers here have a very similar charging swipe combo as the patients in the research hall. It's not exactly about the art direction, but given their lore connection, it's just another example of FromSoft putting so much thought into every little moment of this world and the creatures that have the bad luck to live in it. Alright, we should at least address this. Bloodborne is not a Souls game, taking place in a different universe with a different continuity. The fact that this book is titled Bloodborne Official Artworks instead of Bloodborne Design Works, as the Souls art books are, seems to recognize that fact. but people do tend to group it in with the Souls games, hence the moniker Soulsborne when talking about the FromSoft continuum. I would argue that it's grouped in for the same reason that Criterion published a pressing of Guillermo del Toro's Spanish-language movies together as a trilogy. Even though they all feature different characters and plots and are not set in the same continuity, these movies are very clearly all important steps in the same creator's artistic journey. It's the same principle with Hidetaka Miyazaki and Bloodborne, as the influence of Bloodborne's faster and more kinetic playstyle shows up handily throughout his next project, Dark Souls 3. So that's why there's a question of expectations when it comes to this art book, and also a question of whether or not those predetermined expectations are actually justified when it comes to a book like this. Because my favorite parts of the Dark Souls art books were the in-depth interviews with the creators. You might not get as much out of these if you just like art books for the art, but in games like these, the art and physical design go hand in hand with the philosophy behind them. I mentioned the part in the Dark Souls design works where Miyazaki talked about how he wants the visceral monsters to tell a tragic story, rather than simply horrify based on their looks alone. I can tell you honestly as a writer, that is the kind of advice that I want to be able to internalize in my own work. And Miyazaki's games are so rich with inspiration that I feel it's a tremendous missed opportunity that Bloodborne does not have an interviews section. And this is why I was talking about expectations, based on whether or not we want to consider Bloodborne as part of the Souls continuum. Because as important as I find the commentative aspect of them, art books are first and foremost about the art, and this Bloodborne art book delivers in spades. And if that's all you're after, you will cherish this wonderful book. As valuable as I personally find them, things like developer commentary are extras. I almost feel like I sound greedy or entitled by lamenting that this book doesn't come with much in the way of developer commentary, because I have to consider that the Dark Souls art books went above and beyond by including those interviews. And you might fall on this a different way. It's all down to what you personally value in art books. But I think we can all agree on this. Bloodborne's art direction and design are incredible. It's one of the reasons we'll look back at this game as a benchmark of its generation, along with the incredible control, majestic bosses, terrifying sound, and lush area design. And it's a testament to this game's dark beauty that I want to know more. I want to dig deeper. I want to sift through the festering putridity on the surface and really internalize their inspirations behind the grotesque bosses and haunting areas. This art book would have been a perfect place for that. But not all secrets are meant to be uncovered, and based purely on the beautiful artwork of this wondrous nightmare, this is an excellent book. If you're one of the countless players who finds yourself constantly drawn back to this dreadful hunter's dream, then go and buy this book. As with most things, you'll find it cheaper on Amazon than in a brick-and-mortar retailer, but given the complaints I've heard about the book getting knackered in transit, you might want to visit that Chapters or Barnes & Noble if you've got the dosh. And if you're a fan of dark fantasy or Victorian beast hunts or cosmic horror, but you aren't much into video games, then, well, you're probably not watching this, but the art is so good that you'll get something out of it as well if you decide to pick it up. Since this is the first art book review I'll be doing, but not the last, I'd like to take a minute to field a question that some of you might be asking. What's the big deal with video game art books? Isn't this artwork best consumed through the in-game experience? If they've done their job right in translating this material onto the disc, wouldn't still images miss some of that essential something-something? And there are several reasons why these kinds of books are popular. The first is the same reason why people enjoy coffee table books of famous paintings or of professional photographs. The blown-up imagery is just beautiful, and in a game like this where the art direction is key, it makes it all the better. The second is basically the same reason why people enjoy watching behind-the-scenes documentaries about their favorite films. The best art books, in my opinion, are the ones that offer revealing commentary about crucial design decisions, as well as early builds that show concepts going from alpha phases to that sweet, sweet final product. And I touched on this earlier, but the third reason is a bit personal to creators in general. If you're an artist, seeing how these beautiful worlds came together behind the scenes can help or enlighten or even inspire you. If you're a writer, the design commentary about key narrative choices can do much the same. And if you're a game designer, it just plain makes sense from a professional standpoint to see how great games like this come together from the ground up. And to be honest, I think art books like this have more staying power in modern gaming than traditional player's guides do. After all, elements of a printed guide can be rendered obsolete or inaccurate the moment a game gets its first patch, but great art is forever. And that about wraps it up for my take on the Bloodborne Official Artworks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of this video in the Book Nook. If you like this type of review, maybe you enjoy reading, so check out my website for plenty of text articles on games, film, and more. Link in the description below. And if you want something a bit more fictional, it also has links to my novels in physical and digital formats. I'll see you next time.